Welcome to the Simplify, Lead and Grow podcast, where business leaders share real strategies for growth. Hosted by Steve Kopecki, each episode offers insights to help you simplify, lead with purpose, and achieve success. Get ready for a wealth of knowledge and inspiration. The journey to simplify, lead, and grow starts now.
Hello and welcome. I'm Steve Kopecki, the president and owner of Compass Performance, which is an executive and business coaching company. I'm the host of the Simplified to Grow and Grow podcast as well. At Compass, we work with organizations, teams, and entrepreneurs as they intentionally build a work culture of 80-20, simplification and accelerated growth, building a bridge to profitability and a culture of continuous learning. Today, my guest on the Simplify and Grow podcast is Mike Domitrz, the president of the Center for Respect. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thanks for having me, Steve. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I talked over you. That's not very respectful.
That's okay.
Can you tell us a little bit about your business and how you got into the business, and what inspired you to start this company, and that would be really great.
So the initial mission began it was inspired in 1989 by a horrific situation. And so in 1989, I was in college and I received a phone call that one of my sisters had been raped. And I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was filled with rage, anger, confusion, a bit of being lost in the moment. And about a year later, while struggling with this, I heard a speaker and I thought, wait, I could do something about this. And so I started speaking out. I was 21 when I started speaking. I started speaking in college classrooms, local high schools and middle schools, and even elementary. And it really grew from there. In 2002, we went to this full time. And what happened was, while working with a lot of schools and universities, the military came to us in around 2005 and said, can you do for us what you're doing for universities? Except could you expand it even further into marriage and other areas? And we were like, absolutely. And suddenly we were doing a lot of work with the US military all over the world. And then during that journey, some people said, hey, what about corporations? Can you take this message to them? And so we changed it, though. It's not about sexual respect in the corporations. It's about a culture of respect in every facet of our lives and how we treat each other on a daily basis in the workplace. And that's started to take off there. And so that's where each of the different arms of the business came out of. And then what happened is, after years of doing this as a speaker, people were coming to me going, can you teach me how you did what you did? You have a very difficult topic. How do you engage audiences? How do you get mission driven? How do you get people to take action? And suddenly I was doing speaker coaching, which I love. I have a background of coaching in my life. And so we do that also and have a lot of fun doing that, helping people catapult their speaking, whether they're a CEO who wants to be more effective or they want to be a full-time speaker.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, and the passion obviously was there on the personal side to start the business.
Absolutely.
And it seems like that seems to be something that I recognize in entrepreneurs as they're starting out. If they have the passion, if they're attached to their business with that passion, it seems like they have a better chance of success.
Yeah, I was just talking with somebody yesterday looking at launching a business, and they have a full-time job right now. And I said, well, go out and launch it while you're doing your full-time job. If you're sitting there going, my full-time job, I don't have time for that. If you catch yourself doing that, or I'm overstressed over here, so I don't have time for that, this probably isn't your passion business, because you'd find a way to in fact, you'd expend the other jobs at the cost of this passion. So if you find yourself not wanting to do that, it's usually a sign this might not be for you. And that's a good lesson to learn.
Hopefully early enough before you spent too much money, right?
That's right. Time and money. Yeah.
Yeah, time and money. So when an entrepreneur's in that investigative stage, and maybe they started their business that they thought they were going to be able to build, what are some common misconceptions that take place that maybe you learned through that process as well early on?
The idea that I'm going to explode the business in the next 3 months, 6 months, or a year. And we see it in every industry, including the speaking industry. How to make this much money in 3 months? And I said, name a major corporation or business that has a 3-month plan for the company to suddenly be surviving on its own. Most businesses take a 5-year plan to survive. If they get to year 5, it's a really good sign. It's a fantastic sign. This idea that you're going to be flying and soaring in 6 months is one of the most painful things to do to yourself, because you're creating very unrealistic expectations. And I know people go, well, that's me being an optimist. I'm the living example of an optimist. I believe there'll always be something more around the corner. And yet it's not healthy to run a business with unrealistic expectations. And so I think one of the big things people have to do is realize this is a 5-year journey. Are you in it for 5? Or are you sitting here going, I'm going to try it for a year? Because that's probably not going to be a good approach. You're probably going to bomb out within the year or right after the year because you've set yourself up for failure by not having a long-term approach.
Were there times when, because it seems like, you have a lot of energy, obviously, and you're passionate about this business, which is great. Were there times when you took on some things that maybe you shouldn't have? Caused a lot of confusion.
Constantly. So what I would do is I would go to like a conference, hear a speaker, tell how to grow their business a certain way. I'd write down every note and that night implement it. My friends would joke that I was the king of implementation. Nobody implemented faster than I did, which was true in many ways. But what you end up doing is doing a lot of things good to really well, but none of them are probably as good as they could have been with somebody else letting them handle that. So what I tell people all the time is do less better. Yeah. The world is going to tell you to do it all. Do every social media channel. Do all this. Do all that. Do less better. And you're going to fill your soul more with that. Get less overwhelmed. I constantly was overwhelming myself and just thought, well, that's what you have to do. And no, you don't have to. You can choose to do less and do it exceptionally.
That's terrific advice. I've been talking with a couple of people on different podcasts, and some of them actually go deep into trying to help organizations with that exact issue, is making sure they're focused on where the value is. And if they can have some data that can even support them on that solution or conclusion, that would be a good thing. So even before they start their planning process, if you will.
Yeah. Am I spending time in my zone of genius? And does my zone of genius produce sales, revenue, right? No matter what your mission is, it's a business in the end, and you have to survive. It's going to need revenue and even equally important, profits, right? So that's another big lesson that a lot of people make the mistake of. They get caught on revenue versus profits, right? So, oh, we're going to hit this revenue. Oh, we're going to hit 1 million revenue. What did it cost you to get there? 999,000. All right. Well, that doesn't sound like a good business plan, but I have $1 million business.
Yeah.
But what good is 1 million? You see this in Shark Tank, shows like Shark Tank all the time.
Right.
Somebody counts on and we did 2 million and the whole room's like, wow, fantastic. Right. How much do you have in the business? 3 million. So
exactly.
The whole room's like, whoa, hold on a second here. And people make that mistake in their small businesses all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think entrepreneurs that do that, sometimes they say they're out. they say, that's it. I'm done. I'm out. I can't make any money at this. I made some revenue, but and
early in my years, I did a lot on debt because I didn't have a cash flow to start with. I didn't have reserves. And so we took the risk of going into debt. We just believed we'd get out of it. Now, with that said, it was a harder journey because we chose that route, right? Having debt over your shoulders over a long period of time can add stress to one's life. And so you have to recognize, if I add this debt, am I up for that stress? And if that's something that's going to stress me, probably not a good business approach for me. But if it's something that I'm going to be okay with, understanding that's part of a business growth, then probably you're going to be okay with that. It's that entrepreneur mindset versus the business manager mindset. As you're probably aware, Steve, most people start businesses, love to say they're entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
That's not what makes an entrepreneur at all. That's not even the definition of an entrepreneur. It's not somebody who starts a business. An entrepreneur's mindset is they can't sit in one business. As soon as they start one and it gets built, they actually need to be out of it because they're not built to manage a business. And so they're going on to something else. And so when you look at entrepreneurs, real entrepreneurs, they've got 20 businesses or they're in their 20th business. They've sold off 19. If you're somebody like me who's had the same business for 20 years, we can't call ourselves entrepreneurs anymore. We might be creative and original in what we're doing, but that's not an entrepreneur.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I was talking with one yesterday, and the gentleman was talking about having to manage people, and it was a coaching opportunity certainly for me. But, but that really wasn't something that was in his DNA.
No, most entrepreneurs are going to hire a CEO to run the company because they're not built to run companies. They're built to build them. Right. And that's a very different process.
He was having so much frustration, he wanted to go back out to actually doing the sales side of it.
Right, exactly.
So, okay, great. Well, how do you maintain balance with you're in a mature business now. I mean, you've had this business for a while, and how do you maintain balance?
Well, it's this fine line of not getting caught in the greatness, right? So what I mean by that is when sales are up, thinking we're flowing, we're rolling, and then not generating for the future to create that going. I think that's one of the biggest keys that almost everybody I know has made the mistake of at some point or another. They do less of the marketing because it's flowing in. And so they get caught in the weeds of the flow coming at them, the details, and they forget what got that flow going. And they don't keep that feeding itself. So I think that's one. Two is get yourself out of the weeds. Bring team members in that are in the details. So as much as possible, you're not working in your business, you're working on it. Everybody's heard that phrase before. I think this is going to depend on the person, though. And this is, for me, I've made a choice to be in my business. And it's a choice for me that I work on it and in it. Others work purely on it. Others work purely in it. But you need to know which it is, because if you're in it, you're definitely not growing it. If you're only in it, if you're on it and in it, you might be able to grow it. You're probably in full growth if you're just on it, right? And in comparing the three. But you have to know what your personality, where it works well. I think that's really critical.
In line with that, innovation, and how do you keep on the edge of innovation and what you offer to your customers as being an
exactly
solution?
And speaking of balance, I would also say the life balance issue. I don't think there's such a thing as balance. I think there's life integration, right? Because the average person's going to work 40 hours. Entrepreneurs can work 80 hours. We know that. And there are people in steady jobs working 80 hours. Well, then you can't tell me it's a balance, because that's well over half of the time that you're awake, that you're working. So then the question is, how do I integrate a holistic approach? Where do I make time for my health? Where do I make time? And I think this one's critical, that we still don't see CEOs and C-suite discussions around mental health, right? It became big in this past Olympics. It became big in particularly the Tokyo Olympics that sparked it into this Olympics. But we still don't see it being discussed a ton at the C-suite level. And I think, therapy should be as common as going for a workout.
Yeah.
You take care of your body. Why are you not taking care of your mind and your thoughts and your emotions? And so I think one of the keys to a wellness approach to leadership is therapy. Finding a great therapist that fits your model of how you think. Everybody's different. Some people do talk therapy and it works. For me, ADHD mind, talk therapy actually is not very effective, because I can talk myself out of anything, rationalize it. My body doesn't feel better after that.
Right.
So for me, somatic therapy works really well, which is body-based, and pay attention to the body. Then you quiet the mind. It actually is much more. So finding what works for you allows you to have that more integrated lifestyle.
That's great. So, and definitely having someone that you can talk to about what's going on.
Yes.
Being an entrepreneur, you're kind of out there by yourself, aren't you?
Yeah. And it can be any aspect of your life, right? What's beautiful about a good therapist is sometimes they're just going to say to you, yeah, sounds like a normal thought. And that's all you needed to hear was like, oh, this isn't weird. I'm not unusual for having that thought. And you go, oh, okay. I'm normal, right? But we don't think that when we're on the island all by ourselves at times, especially as entrepreneurs. We can feel like we're on that island. Other times I go, well, no, not everybody. You might go, but that's normal. And they might pause and go, not everybody is having that struggle or having that thought or having that. So give yourself some grace, right? So then it's the other side of it going, let's dive into this to help you through it, because you don't have to live with that, right? And so it's understanding both those gifts are in therapy.
That's great. That's great advice. I mean, you're not alone, and you're not so odd.
No,
maybe, right?
No.
I mean,
there's a couple great books that bring this up. None of us are that original. And the more we think we are, the more we put ourselves in an isolated situation. If I think no one else understands what I'm going through, that's a lonely place to be. But it also is an ego place to be. Right. Look at me, all here alone, right? Versus going, well, millions of people must have gone through this. Certainly billions over the course of human existence. This isn't that unusual. That now makes it calming, normal. And you go, all right, where do you go to support me on this? Because certainly other people have been through this.
So important advice. particularly what your organization does around respect as well. And when things get a little bit out of balance, sometimes not having a focus on respect as part of our core culture or part of how we work together can make things very difficult to work together.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
So excellent. Plans for the future, kind of a glimpse into the future of your business, and what are some of the things that you're looking to do?
Yeah, we're really expanding the speaker coaching. We're finding people really love that. I tend to do what I've realized, Steve, is that on that business model, I love the one-day intensive. So some people get coaching where, oh, I want to work for a year with someone. Typically, that means you're treading water for a year because you're not going all in and it's a slow growth. It's tough for most people to do well that way. So we do a one-day intensive where someone flies out here to Wisconsin and spends a day with me, or they fly me to them. And we dig deep for one straight day and go all in and really help them catapult that. I love that. I really enjoy that. So that's one area that we've really grown. And then the other is we're starting to do retreats where we bring people together, like-minded, to have this journey and fill it with adventure. So half the day is learning, and then half the day is like going on a hike in the jungle to a waterfall and jumping in.
Oh, very good. Very good.
So we're filling the mind and the soul is the idea there.
Right. And experiential.
Exactly. That's right. And as you're aware, when you're doing things in nature, you're doing things that are adventurous, it opens up the mind in ways that the classroom cannot do it. And so when you go back into the workshop in the morning or the afternoon, your mind's in a different place that it could not have gotten to if you had been in the classroom the day before.
Excellent. We have a number of people out there that will be watching the podcast that are aspiring entrepreneurs. What would be some advice that you'd have for them?
Yeah, I would say that, what the common sense advice that I find is most helpful for somebody looking at being an entrepreneur is, how much do you need to survive? Right? And how long can you go off what you have now to make this happen? If you can't legitimately sit down and say, there's any possible way we can do this for 3 years with the money we have, then you need to adjust the plan and go, well, what's the slow approach? What's the doing this while I'm working approach? And give yourself an honest answer. My personality is all in or all out. So I have to find a way to go all for it, or I'll get distracted, right? That's typically, I don't know if you know the book Driven. The book Driven really is, most entrepreneurs read that, or entrepreneurial minds read that and go, oh my gosh, they wrote a book about me. It feels that dead on. And Driven talks about this. We have to be hunting. Even if we're not being entrepreneurial, we have to be doing something and all into it, whatever it is. So if it's my speaking, or if it's a new speech, or if it's coaching, it's all in or nothing. That's how we're wired. And if somebody tries to contain that or teach us to manage that, it will be very depressing, because we'll be tampering down how we're wired to live this life. And so if you're a driven, you have to step back and go, I know I have to go all in if I'm going to do this. Can I do this with what we have now? Or how many years will it take me to get there where I can go all in? Right? If you're not a driven, hey, you're more wired to be able to take the slow approach. So I would say, look at that and go, how do we make this journey little steps at a time, right? One day at a time. And then the big part is find community. I think this isn't discussed enough. Surround yourself with other entrepreneurs in a similar journey. Create a mastermind. Find 5 people starting their business at the same time you are. It could be totally different industries, but get together once a month. Get together for 2 hours over breakfast and really inspire and support each other.
That mastermind concept is interesting. How would you recommend a person that's starting out their business to find the right people for their mastermind?
Well, what we do in our industry, in the speaking industry, we have the National Speakers Association. It's the trade association for speaking. So all my masterminds have come out of there. I look around and go, who are people I'd like to spend more time with and who I'll grow with? And I've been in 3 major masterminds over the past 12 years. One for 6 years, one for 2 years, current one about 3 years. And it's okay to walk away also and go, I got what I needed out of this group, or it's not the match for me, and to walk away from that. But they have been huge impacts on my life and my business. I want to stress both, because sometimes it's the life stuff that you need the most support in while running a business.
Oh, that's great. Thank you very much for that, Mike. Anything else that you'd like to add to our listeners on Simplify and Grow?
Yeah, well, let's start with the name of the podcast, right? Keep it simple. If you're sitting there and you're trying to build a business and you're creating 9 arms of this business before one has seen any momentum. Maybe pull back and say, where's the one place I would thrive the most and stay there? Niche. It keeps it simple. So when people ask me, how'd you grow so fast? Well, it's not really what happened. I grew fast in one area with universities early on, and then high schools added on, and that grew fast. And then the military grew on, and that grew fast. If I try to do all 3 of those at once, they're completely different channels, completely different language, different understanding of culture. It would have been very difficult to stay focused and successfully work with all 3. Then when I had a corporate, I already had the other 4 down. So it was adding that new one. Give yourself simplicity and make sure you're staying in a channel that you can thrive in first. Where's the low-hanging fruit? Go there, get some momentum.
Excellent. Thank you. To the listeners, I would just like to thank Mike for joining us today and giving us some great advice on entrepreneurship and simplification. Very much appreciate that. You obviously exemplify the pillar of respect and kindness. If everybody was here when we started the show, it didn't work out so well. And Mike just has this ability to relax you and say, hey, we can figure this out. And how important that is to integrate respect and kindness in your business culture as a foundation and a step towards simplifying and focusing. It is critical as organizations and entrepreneurs are looking to put together their plan. Just remember to have that foundation of simplification, and in this case, also add to that respect for your customers, respect for yourself, respect for others, your employees, etc. You also highlighted how important respect is as a cornerstone to running a business. And I know that if we had more time, you'd be talking about how important it is to being a leader and a coach and developing teams, etc. So I really appreciate your time today. And for all those that are listening, just remember to continue to simplify and grow.
Well, thanks for having me here, Steve. I appreciate it. If anybody does want to get a hold of me, by the way, besides centerforrespect.com, they can find me at soulfulspeakers.com. So that's where the coaching is. That's usually where people are trying to get a hold of me through. So soulfulspeakers.com or centerforrespect.com. Thank you, Steve, for an awesome and fun conversation.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Simplify, Lead, and Grow podcast. We hope this episode provided you with valuable insights and actionable strategies to apply in your leadership journey. If you enjoyed the show, consider subscribing and leaving a review to help us reach more listeners. Be sure to share this podcast with fellow leaders ready to simplify their approach, lead with purpose, and grow their business. Until next time, continue to lead with passion and grow with purpose.